Jungkook headed downstairs with his fingers curled into fists, with his face expressions completely stern, with his eyes showing the flames of fire in them. He went towards his study room, as he knew his secretary must be there at this hour of time, dealing with his work. Upon opening the door of the study room, calmly yet angrily, his secretary turned around, only to see his boss in utmost anger, his fingers on the laptop's keyboard, which was on the study table, his nose wearing glasses. Looking at his boss, he stood up and bowed before him. Jungkook immediately went towards him, crossing the table and holding his secretary's collar of the shirt tightly. The secretary was shocked for a second. His eyes widened, and Jungkook looked at him with his eyes showing visible rage in them. The secretary was scared for a second. When he saw Jungkook in that condition, he felt a shiver running down his spine. Jungkook looked at his eyes for more than a minute, then threw him on the ground. He sat on his secretary and held his collar again. What the hell do you think you are doing? I respect you, but that doesn't mean you. His secretary shut up when Jungkook punched him in the face. He punched him again, and then again. The punch was so strong and filled with rage that if he did that to the wall, it might have broken down. His secretary started bleeding from his mouth and nose. When he was finally unable to move any more, Jungkook asked him, "How dare you touch my wife?" He shouted. His loud growl echoed through the whole house, making his secretary scared to death. Jungkook waited for his answer, but it didn't come. The rage was increasing more and more in his veins. But his secretary wasn't even in full of his senses after getting hit so many times. Jungkook asked him again. "I won't ask once again, so you better tell me before I burn you down to ashes." When he came into senses, he scoffed. The most surprising thing for Jungkook, yet the most infuriating. Jungkook's eyes flickered. The secretary started laughing then, and spoke up finally. "Did she tell you all about it?" "I told her not to. Otherwise—" Before he could complete, Jungkook took out a dagger from his waist belt and started scratching the secretary's under eye. The room was filled with his screams, the rage of Jungkook, and the pain of his secretary. Jungkook asked him, "What did you threaten her with? That she was so afraid of telling me the truth?" His secretary spoke up in fear, as he couldn't take the pain anymore. "I am her ex-boyfriend," he shouted. "When I saw her here for the first time, I effed her without telling you, without her consent. But she didn't tell you." He continued. "Today, she was resisting it. That's why I beat her bit. Why, does that make you jealous that someone else were her boyfriend, except you? I had her pictures. I threatened her with them, but she still told you about it. Guess she doesn't have any shame left." Jungkook continued scratching. The secretary continued screaming. Jungkook's voice lowered and deepened at the same time when he said, "You have a nerve saying all of that in front of my face. He stopped scratching. The secretary stopped screaming. Why do you think I'm telling you all this? Jungkook, because you have a death wish. You, his secretary, stopped Jungkook while speaking. I told her not to inform you about this. Otherwise, I will leak her pictures. I informed you about this so I could tell you too that I will be leaking the pictures. You both are doomed now. Jungkook leaned back, left the collar of his shirt, and dropped the dagger from his hand. With absolute no expressions, he started searching his secretary's clothes to find his phone. As soon as he found one, he dropped it on the ground and hit the screen with the dagger multiple times in utmost anger. Then he heard his secretary's laugh again. Jungkook looked at him and he spoke. Do you think destroying the mobile phone will make you free from all this? I have multiple copies in my laptop, computer, and hard drives. The ones only I know the passwords of and where they are. He laughed again. Jungkook. No one else knows the passwords? Secretary. No one in the world. And I'm not foolish enough to tell them myself, no matter how much you torture me. Jungkook scoffed. That's even better, that no one else knows about them. If I kill you, there won't be anyone who could leak them, right? The smile of his secretary faded away in an instant. The fear in his heart increased, that reached until his eyes. His legs shivered from the sudden realization. Jungkook took out the gun from the back of his shoes and pointed it at the head of his secretary. His voice scattered. Wait, you will regret this. Before he could even say his last words, he was shot in his forehead. Jungkook still wasn't satisfied. He wanted to eat his secretary's flesh himself after tearing every part of his body. But he couldn't bear his secretary's voice anymore. He had to shut it down. He tried to clean the blood from his coat, but it wouldn't come out. He put it off. He got up from him with no expressions again, ordering his men to clean up the mess, who came after hearing the gunshot. Vian's heart thundered in her chest in her bedroom. She shivered upon hearing the gunshot, which almost felt like an earthquake in the house. She put her hands on her ears, which almost bled from the sound, as it was her first time hearing it from such closeness. She curled her knees up and kept shivering. Meanwhile, Jungkook opened the door of their bedroom and saw Wyan sitting like that. She noticed him reaching towards her. She backed down a bit while saying, Please don't. It's not my fault. I was. She couldn't complete that he straightened her curled leg and rolled open her bandage, with no absolute expressions again. He noticed the injury from each angle, and then took the first aid kit from the side table. He kneeled on the ground beside the bed. He washed her wound first carefully, blew on it calmly, and cleaned it softly, then rolled the bandage slowly. It was needed to be done again, as earlier she did it hurriedly, without even washing it. So he did that for her. She looked at him all the time, how gently he blew on her wound, that she didn't even feel any pain. Or was it because she was lost in his eyes? She felt her heart flutter when he took care of her the way she wanted herself to be treated. She kept looking at him. She couldn't move her eyes away from the magnificent view. The fear that she was feeling earlier because of the gunshot finally washed away when she was lost in his eyes. She saw the love and care for herself in his eyes. That's why she kept looking in them. She liked looking in them. He then went towards her hand, the one which she was unable to put the bandage on earlier. He blew on it too. She fell for him again. She smiled, unknowingly, unintentionally. She smiled. As she was lost in his eyes, she didn't realize when he was done. He looked at her and found her already looking back, their eyes locked. They fell deeper and deeper in each other's eyes. They kept looking. He blinked finally. She also came to senses and fake coughed. He cleared his throat and got up from his place. He put the first aid kit in its place. He went to his side of the bed after switching off the lights and laid down there, facing the opposite side from her. He closed his eyes. As she was about to lie down, she stopped when he said, his face still on the opposite side, "The wound will heal, but you need to take care of it too. And don't worry, I won't shoot inside the house again. I'm sorry," he said, his voice a healing balm for her. She never saw this side of him, although he showed her a lot of times, but she was unable to perceive it. Silence again. He slept. She smiled and lay down on the bed herself. She switched off her side of the lamp and closed her eyes.